Okay.
And Aggie started the whole thing by turning around and asking collectors to join her, and over 30 collectors did join her. And it is a 5-year spend down because we didn't want to put the money into an endowment. We wanted to get the money into the field to make the difference. And because so many people have donated, we are now going to go for an extra year. So we have an additional $20 million. So we're going to go 6 years. And actually today, LA Iworks said they're going to create a frame that is going to be dedicated, all the funds raised will be dedicated to Art for Justice. So every day there are lots of ways to participate. We would love you to join us. I mean, you know, I feel like there is sort of this, everybody could make a different movie. I could make a million different movies. And at some point you just feel like, you know, Maya Angelou has this quote, if you won't remember what people said or even what they did, you'll just remember how they made you feel. And there was a point when I just thought, if it's not making me feel like she makes me feel, the good things and some of the weird things and some of the funny things, that it just wasn't useful. And, you know, I do feel like, you know, actually in answer to that question, I would have to say that being at Sundance where the premiere was, and my children were there, and my youngest sister was there with me, and right after the opening, we went out to dinner, and she started crying, and she made this toast to my family. And she said, I never knew you had that relationship with my mother, with our mother. And I didn't have that same relationship. And it was so interesting because, you know, watching it tonight, I almost started crying during the AIDS part. And I think, you know, that's always a moving part for me because I lost my best friends and my roommate and my boss and Vito. And, you know, I was only 23 years old, but because tonight I was thinking, you know, that was a virus, that is not this virus, but this is the same government. And the government is responding ideologically, and it is not responding scientifically, and that's what they did to us then. And they demonized and they stigmatized gay people, and they're demonizing and stigmatizing Asian people now. And those things are the same. Those are the very same things. And so I guess, you know, how do you tell any story? I guess maybe the answer is that, you know, I was telling my own story in telling this story. If we look at voting and we think of people in this country who should be able to vote, we should all vote, we should all be able to vote. And right now in California, there, you know, people on parole can't vote, and that makes people think they can't vote if they've ever had a felony conviction. People in Florida just finally had it overturned, 1.4 million people, and over half of them still owe a little bit of money, and the judges decided that they cannot vote until they pay that little bit of money. And that's what Aggie was talking about when she mentioned LeBron. And LeBron has put up all this money, and now luckily Michael Jordan's trying to match him and whatever. They can do that and then give lots of money, but we're trying to pay people's fees and fines in Florida so they can vote. But I think we just have to focus on what it really means to vote. I really learned to put it in words, from Brian Stevenson. And, you know, he's a criminal, as everyone saw, if they don't already know him, from his incredible book, Just Mercy, that also is a movie.
If you have not read the book, it is a must-read in your lifetime.
And one thing that he says is that, you know, legislative change is always downstream from cultural change, from narrative change. And his example is Brown versus Board of Education, which changed the laws and said that children could go to school or could go to school with children of different races, but it did not end racism. And only cultural change can end that. And I think we're seeing that with the defund the police, and that there's so many people 6 months ago, a year ago, who would have been like, defund the police? What are you talking about? Like, defund the police? And now if you say to people, do you think children should go to a school where the only support person in the school for them is a police officer? Not a nurse, not a guidance counselor, not a therapist, no one else in that school. I think that's like a really clear message about how we need, you know, when we say defund the police, we're not saying give up on people. We're saying, you know, what I learned recently during the movement, which I didn't know until 2 months ago, was that we didn't used to have the emergency medical, the ambulance drivers. That police used to be called to come and get people who needed to go to the hospital, and police are like driving, going, we don't know how to take care, we don't know CPR, we don't know how to, and now we would never say like, oh, partner is, having a heart attack, I should call the police. Nobody would do that now. And if we start thinking about like where the police are and what we're asking them to do, even police are saying we're asking them to do too much. We're asking them to get people out of overdoses. We're asking them to, deal with homelessness. Those are not their jobs. And we can actually change a narrative. And I think artists help us do that.
Well, Kat speaks to imagination, and I think that it is criminal justice reform work, which has been very ably led by lawyers and organizers for many, many years. One of the things that we have been missing, perhaps, is the sense of possibility. The work is so hard and grueling, and so there is so much pain that so often there isn't the opportunity to really dream.
And the imagination we're talking about is not just an artist, not that an artist is ever just, not an artist, but also people who are, and you'll see I feel bad, it's like spoilers, but the whole film really is about, justice is about imagining things that aren't there. And a blank canvas is about imagining something that's not there, right? You go here and on the hilltop, there's a little stage up there for people to perform on. There's nothing on that stage right now. And tomorrow there will be magic on that stage. So it's about really finding this sweet spot of where art and activism and advocacy, I've never been able to separate myself and say, oh, I'm an artist, I'm an activist, I'm a philanthropist, I'm a mom. Like those are all one thing. But we started with Art for Justice, and then it was sort of, what do you need to know to see why Art for Justice is what it is and what it's able to achieve? And so we'd add one bit, and then we were like, well, why does she care about women artists? And then you had to add, like, why does she care about art? And then you had to go back to college, and then you had to go back to her childhood. So we don't, you'll notice, I have 2 beautiful sisters and a brother, and none of them are in the movie. She has a sister and 4 brothers, and none of them are in the movie.
Yeah, I'm sure they were happy about
Right,
that.
it's not, you'll see, it's not like a biographical, there's a lot that's left.